Let's talk about how we're feeling. It's just about 6 p.m. Eastern time here on the East Coast of the United States, and this is my. I missed the Substack yesterday. I was busy working on an event that we had last night for the Lunar New Year and the start of Ramadan and the solar eclipse and the new moon and all that. So, I talked recently about our moral compass and where our moral compass is and our identity. We've talked about that. Having an identity crisis, having lost our moral compass. So, what I want to talk about today is, well, first of all, how we're feeling about all that. How are we feeling about, for this many years, really more than a decade, how are we feeling about this many years having been subjected to really a totally unfair system, a government that now has devolved into being a total criminal enterprise, nationally and internationally, a regime that's taken over our democracy and stolen everything from us, including our reputation on the world stage and our dignity. In any manner that the rest of the world saw the United States of America as a beacon in any way, despite all our failings, in any way that we were being seen as the place to be, the place to go, the place to want to visit and to want to live, that's gone. And this regime has stolen that. But what gets stolen can be recovered. And what gets broken can be repaired. That's usually the case. I reflect often on how angry I am when somebody else thinks that they represent me, and what they represent is the total opposite of who I feel that I am. So, and I know that we all share that. We don't want a representative who's in the Oval Office to be a 34 times convicted felon that's engaged in all kinds of trafficking, has been engaged in all kinds of trafficking and money laundering and the rest of it. And I'm just saying that based on what we know. So I wonder how we got here, and I know that we all have so much to learn from how we got here. Our identity used to be, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think the God part was added later. But anyway, we stopped as a collective nation. We stopped stating that. When I was in parochial school early on in my education, we said it every morning. We put our hands over our heart and we said the Pledge of Allegiance. That was a way of setting our, like I've been talking about, our compass. That was a way of setting us in a sort of a collective identity, which a society needs, for better or for worse. A society needs to have a collective identity. A country needs to have that in order to succeed. The Ukrainian people have that. They're committed to keeping themselves a sovereign nation. They're committed to keeping their democracy. Hello, everybody. A sovereign nation, a democracy, has been stolen from the United States of America in a certain way. We see in Ukraine, the Ukrainians know who they are, and 4 years into this horrific situation with Putin trying to steal their country, they know the Ukrainians know who they are, and they're standing strong on it. This America that we're in, sometimes we wonder if we have a freaking idea who we are anymore because our identity has been stolen. We are victims of identity theft and a whole lot more, but identity theft. And what happens in life, as we all know, and I'm just reiterating things that you all know and you feel. I'm not teaching you anything. I just think it's good to kind of join our feelings and have some kind of a forum together where we can go, yeah, I feel like that too. You feel like that? I feel like that too, because we don't feel as alone. In our own lives, a lot of us learn the hard way what it cost us to not know who we are. Somebody can really assault and abuse somebody who's vulnerable, in many different ways, who's vulnerable due to not, for one reason or another, not ever having established who they are in life, right? Who we have to establish that within ourselves. And I was having a conversation with our friend Kathy that you all know recently, in which she pointed out that this whole stereotype that we've been fed by corporate America, if you got to be this, you got to be, Abercrombie and Fitch, and you got to be like Victoria's Secret, or you got to be like get the Gap guy or the Gap girl, and all that, and the makeup and everything, right? You got to be that. So in so many ways, corporate conglomerates really didn't really dictate, but were so heavily funded that they had a heavy influence on what we decided that we were as individuals. I'm not saying it took over your identity, but it was heavily influenced. If you wanted to be different from the rest, well, people like to be part of a tribe in a certain way. So if you wanted to be different, that was kind of a lonely path. So we all kind of became influenced by the same thing, which really had to do with how much we had and how we looked and, all that. What other people thought of us based on what was being set as the expectations, not by us as individuals, but by corporate. It sneaked in. When we're vulnerable, we'll fall for anything. You know that line? I know John Mellencamp had a song. It might have been the name of the song. You got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. Maybe that was kind of a cliche quote, but I heard it first from him many years ago. I don't feel that we are taught in general from a young age what to stand for. But let's rewind. I think in many ways we have been sort of hypnotized into forgetting. And that, along with the omission of civics from the classroom, no more schoolhouse rock, taking the Pledge of Allegiance out of the school, and diluting our democracy, like having a watered down democracy that got to the point where this is my real life experience. I'm going to share with you. It got to the point where I marched in the past 3 years, 3 separate 4th of July Independence Day parades. One was on the 3rd, July 3rd. And I got kicked out of the parade. I didn't leave because that's just how I roll. In my local parade, they tried to have me not in the parade holding a sign that said the choice is ours, democracy or dictatorship, right? That's all it said. The choice is ours. I had a banner, I'm holding it. The choice is ours. On the 4th of July, in the 4th of July parades, and people got bent out of shape and they were like, well, you can't have that here. And I'm thinking, it's a freaking 4th of July parade. Or how about the latest one was in the the election year in 2024. And on July 1st, the corrupt, illegitimate Supreme Court declared that Trump could have king rights, kingly rights, a kingly standing. And I'm going through the parade saying, we don't want another king. And people looked at me like they didn't know what I was talking about. So we lost. Seriously, it really happened. Some people were angry at me for standing up for democracy. Not everyone, but enough that I just was taken aback. Like, wait, what's the point of a 4th of July parade? Did I miss something? Nobody really told me that there wasn't the theme of, winning our independence from King George. Just amazing. That's how far away from our identity in the United States of America that we drifted. And in that kind of a situation, anything can get in. I like describing it as an opportunistic infection just for the sake of making a point, which I first heard from Marianne Williamson. I heard her refer to, what's happened with the whole MAGA thing as it got in because we were weak. And what we were weak in was our sense of who we are as a nation. And if that goes on for too long with an individual or with an entire nation, then it can't help but get weakened. And then from there, it can't help but fall apart. And now that this is what we're in, we have to make sure it doesn't completely fall apart and disintegrate. It's like a house on stilts that's kind of overlooking. I see homes like this that are like on the ocean, overlooking the ocean, but almost on the ocean. If the base isn't sturdy, one big storm and down goes the whole thing into the ocean. Shaky foundations mean anything can happen. So on an individual level, we know what happens when we don't take a stand, when we don't draw a line with people, when we don't set boundaries that say, I know who I am. Who are you? This is a collective wound and problem that we are having. And you can feel free to share your thoughts. Thomas is saying, time for us to take a stand. Exactly. Yeah, and that's where we are. So the opportunistic infection has gotten into such a degree. We've fallen so far because we don't know who we are in a certain way that there are concentration camps in the United States of America, and they have plans to build more. And honest to God, I saw Katie Britt today. Do we remember her? MAGA. Defending DHS. I just saw a short clip. I'm remembering that she spoke after the State of the Union a while back, and I think it was after Joe Biden spoke. And she was the counter opinion, like the MAGA opinion. I don't know if you guys remember Katie Britt, and she was very much resembling a Stepford wife. I don't remember the entire content of what she said for her rebuttal, but I do remember that we were all amazed at how cookie cutter Stepford wife she appeared to be. You remember that? So today I see her on the House floor, I believe, a little clip of her with her cross on, reading the riot act to the Democrats about not funding DHS. Yeah, you remember her at the kitchen table? Not funding DHS. She has a cross right here. They have a cross. And the cross is it's like beware of wolves in sheep's clothing, right? the cross is where they're trying to convey to you that really they're innocent and they're followers of Christ. That's the message. And she's lambasting the Democrats for this partial government shutdown in which TSA, the Coast Guard, and other aspects of the federal government, other departments are shut down. Do you guys know what the other ones are? TSA and the Coast Guard and FEMA. I don't know if there are any more. So these MAGA Republicans, all holier than thou, are making sure that they take a stand for Christ by being as sadistically cruel and heinous as they possibly can. And all the while, I'm for Christ. I'm a Christian. What? I just told you all I went to parochial school. That's not the Christ that I learned about. And I'm just telling you things that you already know, but it's just so amazing when you see it right there in full living color that the hypocrisy will just take your breath away. I think we're used to it by now, but we cannot make that our identity. So when we don't stand up for who we are individually and collectively, we get into trouble because the opportunistic infection can get in. And then we have people that don't represent anything to do with who we are. And oftentimes quite the polar opposite of who we are as individuals and as a nation, stepping in and filling the space that we left because we weren't willing collectively. I'm not yelling at anyone, me too. We weren't willing to stop before the bleeding got out of control. We weren't willing to stop it because, they had us all busy with chasing this new fashion and chasing this new car and being better than the other. And, even if we weren't adhering to it, that's what we were surrounded by. And nobody was talking about politics. I will complain till my dying day about the overwhelming state of Americans saying we don't talk about politics. How did we get into that? If you don't talk about prevention, if you don't practice prevention, if you don't strengthen your immune system and do the things that'll keep you most healthy, things will get in. We're all constantly fighting. Our systems are constantly fighting bacterias and viruses and funguses and, who knows what else all the time. And our immune systems have to be very, very robust and vigorous at times. And then we can trust our immune system to do its job because we've made it very, very strong and we've reinforced it when it's gotten weak. There is something within us that kicks in and makes us like steely strong when we are forced to declare who we are. I know we lost one of the great Jesse Jackson. We lost him. He was a man who stood his ground. I'm sure John Lewis greeted him in heaven. All the greats that stood their ground are remembered. All the greats that stood their ground for American democracy are remembered. Some were on the stage, center stage, some weren't so much, but they're remembered. All our fallen soldiers are remembered for the stand that they took for democracy. Hope is saying, being a minority, I always talked about politics. I had no real choice. I just wonder, Hope, if others If your friends feel the same way, if your friends who are in, the minority, I hate to even say that that's, uh, I mean, I hate to call you a minority, but I just wonder if your friends felt like they had no real choice also, I'm curious. So I'm a believer that what we do as individuals affects the whole, and that's what e pluribus unum, from my perspective, means: out of many, one. All of us taking a certain position and behaving in certain ways. Your friends felt the same way. They talked about politics. Yeah, I'm just talking about the general. We don't talk about religion or politics. Oh, it's bad. You get in trouble like that. So I don't want to get into a whole discussion about that. I just want to say that individually, if we're having trouble in our lives at all with our own individual personal problems with others, I think that we find it easier if we have set up boundaries in our own lives and decided that a line will not be crossed because we decided that line will not be crossed. And it's usually we're talking about ethics and morals and what we feel our lives are supposed to represent to us, what we feel we want our lives to represent. And there's a degree of self esteem that goes with that, in the sense that if at your core you feel strong in a sense of that I'm here and I matter and it's important that I'm here and I speak up for myself because I I respect myself. If we have that, and most people have to work at it, that's normal. If we stand strong on our principles as individuals, then if somebody crosses the line, we have a problem with that, and we either remove ourselves or we push back. We say what we need to say, and if we don't, then there's real trouble, because if we hold in our negative emotions, it's physically not healthy. I talked about that before, and you all know that. Like I said, I'm just repeating what you already know, but giving us a place to gather and know it together. For instance, if you truly live the creed of do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, then right there, you have defined who you are. And you wouldn't let anybody's behavior that maybe there's somebody you meet that you really admire, and then you see that they treat other people like crap. And then, you at that point, you'd say, sorry, I didn't know you had the side to you. I can't do that. Not compromising is essential to having a healthy life, physically and emotionally. Drawing the line because we know who we are and we know what this country is meant to represent. We know how things go better when we, like we're doing at the rallies and the protests, and we're doing with our activism, when we stand up for ourselves as a nation all together all the time, then this whole thing shifts. This whole hellscape that we're in, where the opportunistic infection got in, heals, it turns, it mends. When somebody's sick, like if you've been sick, if you had a really, really bad flu or something, and you're just going through, just feeling awful, and then there's a certain point at which maybe the fever breaks, and you remember that growing up, having a really bad virus or something, and your mom maybe was all worried, and then had a fever, and then the fever broke, and then she knew you'd be okay. Then your body got to work in healing. The fever has to break. I don't think we're there yet. I think things are definitely heating up, and I know that the MAGAs are weak, very, very weak. They don't want to do their work. And my sense is that a lot of them made promises that they're having a hard time keeping right now, and I won't get into what I think that's all about. I'll save that for my YouTube that I make after this. But this Epstein stuff, for which they have no defense, even though Trump is out there saying that he's done nothing, he's exonerated, when he surely is not. Everything's a hoax to him. Is really making it clear that we have got to not stand for this, because I'm not for assaulting young people, like, obviously we're not, that goes against every cell in my body and your bodies to give that a pass. And now what we're getting into seeing is the international community addressing those of their own that were involved with Epstein. And a lot of them are needing to step down, being forced. And in the United States of America, these criminals, one big one, it's all over the files, are behaving as if nothing is going on and nothing ever happened, and Trump is saying he's exonerated. Oh, he just loves that word. I'm exonerated. As if just saying it makes him innocent. That we have turned a blind eye as a nation. And I know I'm not negating all the activism, right? It's just that it's a collective country. That we took our eye off the ball in the way that we did as a country it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. But there is a way back. I really do feel like the rest of the world leaders that are holding their own accountable for what they did on that island and, and other places. I think they're going to be, I know, they're going to be looking at the United States of America and going, what are you guys doing? Do you have any sense of self and boundaries and where you draw the line? Do you have that? Because it appears that you don't. And the reason that the rest of the world is not seeing consequences for Trump, whose name appears a million times thus far, we're all hearing about this. I don't think the mainstream media is covering it. The rest of the world are looking at us and wondering where our decency is. Are we really not going to stand for decency? Are we really just going to let racism and misogyny be the rule of the day? Are we really going to just go about our lives and not do anything about this because we think somebody else is doing it? Once again, I'm not reprimanding anybody. These are the conversations that are going on in my head. And I just am having these Substack lives in the hopes that others feel the same and that we won't be shut up. I have this great button that says, as far as women go, excuse me, well-behaved women never made history, rarely made history. Sometimes we have to be not rude, but extremely emphatic in order to get the point across. Sometimes we have to just go, not on my watch. It's going to be a long road back. It's going to be a very long road back. Excuse me. But we know who we are. And it's time for us to tell the rest of the world who we are. And I know we've got this, and I know we can do it. The most important thing is that we really much more clearly define who and what the United States of America is. And now, since those in positions of leadership aren't able to do it, it's up to us to do it. I was reading about Susan Collins voting for the SAVE Act, and that further emphasized in my mind they're not going to do it. Not that I was relying on Susan Collins to do the right thing for democracy and for our country, but it further clarified they're not going to do it, so we have to do it. It's we, the people. It's not them, it's us. And the wake-up call that we're having is wake up, America. It's we, the people. And I will end this by mentioning the time for the women has arrived. You cannot stop growth. Growth can be delayed or paused, but it cannot be stopped. And no matter all the bumps along the way, and there have been countless bumps along the way, and we still have yet to have a female president. What is wrong with us? But it's coming. There's a whole lot of women now that have won elections more than ever. And I remember Joe Biden appointed a whole lot of female judges all over the country. I know that we can do this. I just really believe that we need to reinforce who we are. And when we stand for that strongly individually, because we're very, very clear about it, then others pick up on that when we encounter them. Oh, this person's not a shrinking violet. This person knows exactly who he or she is and what he or she stands for. It's called integrity. And more of it will make this country a better place to live. We can be proud to be Americans. We can reclaim our country. We can take all the language back that they took from us. We are a democracy. We are we the people. And we rise up together. Keep the faith. I'll be back tomorrow for a Substack Live, probably around the same time. And you should get a notification. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I'm going to go over to make a video and upload it about the news of the day. All right. I like to say, namaste. See you soon.